Yeah, I'm going to bring Tom on, who wants to discuss abortion, who says the opposite of pro-choice is not pro-life. Tom, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Great. So,
Thanks for calling.
What I'd like to talk about is that the position of pro-life is not, the opposite of that is not pro-choice. The opposite is pro-death. So if you look at pro-choice or pro-life, sorry if I'm dyslexic here, pro-life says no abortions under any circumstances. Pro-life position is you can need an abortion, you want to have an abortion, you can access that. And if you choose that you think that abortion is wrong, you don't have to have one. That's in the middle. The opposite of the pro-life then is pro-death. And that position would be that if you want to have a child, let's say you would have to register the pregnancy and then either have a live birth and then your next one would be terminated, or the first one would be terminated and then you'd have a live one after that. Everybody I've talked with that says that, boy, that's an extreme position. And I agree that it is an extreme position. But I use that as an example to show how extreme the pro-life position is.
Right. Yeah, I think the first mistake we make is calling it pro-life when really what it is pro-birth, because a lot of the exact same people that are pro-life don't necessarily care, or they definitely don't, not even necessarily. They don't care about what happens to the life after it's born. You know, those are oftentimes the same people who advocate for the cutting of welfare services, the cutting of government-funded services like WIC, things that feed families, things that feed infants, things that provide medical care for infants and mothers and single parents. And so I think what the first thing we need to do is call a spade, and pro-life is not pro-life, it's pro-birth, because I consider myself a pro-life person. But what I mean when I say that is if you are alive, I want to make sure you're living well, you're living cared for. I think that the choice whether or not to have a child should be the person who's carrying the child. And I think that is a true pro-life position. You know, they claim that they're for life, but then they're the exact same people that say, oh, welfare moms are draining the system. Oh, you should have pulled up your bootstraps. You should have thought about that before you opened your legs, yada, yada, yada. And that's not a pro-life stance. That is a pro-birth stance. And then they say, F you when the baby's born, and they don't want to take care of it. So I think what we're actually dealing with is pro-birth, which are people who just want these babies to be born because we need people to work at McDonald's and work at Subway and do the low-paying jobs that they don't want to do. They just want people to fund the system so they can retire, and so the economy can boom again. And instead of, you know, addressing the economic problem, they're just like, force people to have babies. We don't like women. And then I think pro-life are the people that say, pro-quality of life, which includes access to abortion, which includes access to medical care, which includes affordable food and housing and education. That, in my opinion, is a true pro-life stance. So my first problem is just those people who only want to teach you a lesson by forcing you to give birth in a country, especially here, where they give it up for adoption. That system is so overrun with children who can't get adopted because the exact same people who demand you give it up for adoption also aren't adopting children. You know, you ask people standing outside of abortion clinics protesting, how many kids have you adopted? I have never heard the answer be more than 0. Never once. In all the videos I've watched and all the TikToks I've watched and all the online discourse, the answer of how many children they have ever adopted is never above 0. I have never once heard somebody say, oh, I've actually adopted 2 babies from somebody who was going to have an abortion at this clinic. So I think it's a sham for them to call themselves pro-life when the opposite is true, and they could not care less about life, especially the life of the mother, especially the life of the infant. They just want to make sure that it's born and put into the system. And then after that, it's the mom's fault. She should have thought about that.
Yeah, I agree with you on everything you said. I use the pro-life term because that's a term that everybody...
Oh, yeah, no, totally. I'm just saying...
Life begins at conception and ends at birth. A second thought I'd like to throw out there for you. Do you remember the Tylenol murders?
Yes.
I think it was in the 70s or early 80s.
Yes. Yeah.
Someone put poison in pills, put them on the shelf, and then weeks later somebody died. Another example of that is that when a woman is pregnant and she's legally not able to access a termination of the pregnancy if the fetus has died, and she loses her life, all that loss is put upon the woman. In a sense, the male was the person that impregnated her, so he has some responsibility for that. If he hadn't done that, she would not have died. I'm suggesting that maybe when we start passing, states pass these anti-abortion laws at the same time, they should pass a law that allows a man to be charged with manslaughter. And actually, in a sense, you could argue that the guy killed two people. If the woman died and the fetus died, two people died. You could even charge him with conspiracy because him and the woman conspired to have sex, which resulted in her death. I think that if men start to die when women die because they can't access an abortion, that maybe people will say, well, maybe it would make more sense to have abortion legal. And
but see, that makes too much sense, Tom. Makes too much sense. We can't have that.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
a Greek guy, 411, Aristophanes. He wrote a play called Lystrata. And basically, there's a comic play about the Peloponnesian Wars, and the women got upset with the men and said, "You guys need to stop fighting." And the guy's like, "Nah, we like fighting. We'll keep fighting." And the women all band together and said, "All right, if you guys want to fight, no more sex." I think all these women that live in states where abortion is illegal, they should refuse to have sex with the men in their lives until abortion is safe and legal.
But here's the problem with that. That was written by, you can tell that play was written by a man because nobody gets assaulted in that play for not putting out. And so what another problem that women have to deal with is, even if every single woman in the United States said we're no longer having sex until abortion is legalized, rape would just be legalized. Like, let's just, be honest with ourselves, unfortunately.
You take all the fun out of my ideas.
I know, because I was actually in the play Lysistrata, a terrible version. It was not good. I'm glad nobody saw it. But I love the idea. And I think it's a very powerful women's literature in terms of the female characters. But I do also think that the reason you can tell it was written by a man is because the realistic thing did not happen, and that is marital rape and things like that happen in society. Now, granted, I would hope that most people who are in relationships would never have to deal with that. Like, I know that I would never have to deal with that. But that is a real, true consequence to women standing up for themselves, especially when it comes to birth and birth control. If every man in society knew that they were not on birth control, that's when that problem would arise. And then it's like, what do we do about that problem, right? Are we suddenly rolling back any laws that were created to protect married women, to protect women in abusive relationships and things like that? And so it all goes, in my opinion, back to what we need to fix is the root of the problem, and that's how much people hate women.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, which is a bummer, because I do love the idea of, like, the play Lysistrata was a really fun story, and I do like that idea. If only it worked. I don't know, Richard, what are your thoughts? Am I just being a Debbie Downer?
No, I don't know. I think I don't really have. I don't really think about this subject very often because I'm not a woman, and I want women to have the autonomy to do what women want to do, and I don't think I have a right to do that. Have that conversation. If I have that conversation in any practical way, it would be with my wife, who is also a woman, and I would have to take feelings into account. So it's
right.
I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure that kind of criminalizing men in the getting women pregnant process is necessarily a good idea. I think that might contribute to even more problems.
It's as unhinged as the idea of criminalizing women, but if we're going unhinged, we might as well go even keeled unhinged.
let's just have everybody going around doing bizarre things, and getting blamed for stuff. I don't know. It's a difficult topic to discuss. I think whenever we're talking about pro-life or all, I find it fascinating how these people who claim to be pro-life, who claim to demand that women give birth, are also largely the same people who kind of demand the death penalty.
Isn't that interesting?
Where's the pro-life in that? It is, I think as you correctly reframed, Sydney, there needs to be a redefinition of terms there, because that doesn't sound very pro-life to me.
Yeah,
but
you know what also doesn't sound pro-life? The fact that the same exact state in the United States that has the highest concentration of megachurches also has the highest concentration of people put to death in prison. Isn't that interesting? Very interesting.
Yeah.
Also, statistically, women who are seeking an abortion are oftentimes already married women with children who already exist. So it's not even like, oh, I don't want to be a responsible parent. It's, I have kids already and they are expensive. Or I have a medical problem. Or for whatever reason, financially, we can't afford this child. But they want you to think it's people going, oh, I just don't want to use condoms. And I'm the woman and I'm doing this by myself because apparently a second person wasn't involved in the process.